All right, 2:31 the time. I'm Rick Roberts. This is the Court of Public Opinion on News Talk, 820 WBAP. Well, you were listening to a replay just a moment ago. That way, most of you know that the governor's event is not tomorrow, it's tonight. And I'll be spending some time with the governor. We have a Q&A scheduled. We'll be doing some analysis of the races that are being voted on today. And by the way, if you're a Republican, no excuse. You got to go out and vote. Democrats in early voting came out unbelievably. A 98% increase over 2014. So if you think the Democrats have decided, well, forget about it. You know, Trump's in the White House. He's got both houses, a majority in both houses, a record number of governorships across the land. No reason for me to vote. Well, you can forget that. If anything, Trump has energized the base, the Democratic base, and you need to vote. I don't know where you work or what you do. I'm sure your boss will understand. You got to go vote. That's all there is to it. If you would like me to pass along a question, you know, you just heard just a moment ago from yesterday, a man that was dealing with some mental health issues in his own family. That's a legitimate question. You know, where do you go in a situation like that? All right, 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227, 233 the time. Have you voted? I hope everybody says yes. Let's go to Jordan in Mesquite. Jordan, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Jordan?
Hey, doing good. Thank you so much for taking my call, Rick.
You bet.
Hey, so 2 years ago, the Republican Party voted on 5 legislative priorities, kind of like planks. One of those is to abolish abortion in the state. So this is a little bit different than just pro-life regulation.
Right.
So there's actually a Proposition 7 on the voting today that people will see. Should Texas abolish abortion? So I want to know from Governor Abbott if he will support a bill. He'll voice his support. He'll lead to abolish abortion in the state next session.
Okay. Now, which proposition are you talking about? There's a Proposition 7. That's the Texas Proposition 7 for financial institutions. That's not what you're talking about, right?
No, I'm not sure why that one is listed. I'm really not sure, but I know that it's definitely one of them on there. I guess I'll back away from saying Proposition 7 just to make sure I'm giving you the right one.
Right. Proposition 7 is a vehicle. It's an amendment for funding.
Okay.
Back in 2015, the voters overwhelmingly approved Prop 7. That's a constitutional amendment to dedicate portions of a company's revenue from the state's general sales and use tax.
Okay. Well, there's a question, if you go vote today, that is going to be part of your voting process.
Right.
And it says, should Texas abolish abortion? And that's going to be one of those. There was actually a bill last year that was kept out of the voting process pretty much. But Governor Abbott, claiming to be pro-life, we would like his support, like his leadership. And this is the second priority. So the first one was constitutional carry. And the very next one that the Republican Party was 88% positive vote on this plank, which was to abolish abortion and also refuse any court order from the federal government to stand down from that priority.
All right. Let me pull up my propositions because I just made my way into the studio just a little bit ago, thanks to a 15-mile backup. Let me pull that up, Jordan, and I'll get right on it. How's that?
That is awesome.
All right. In the meantime, let's go to Kenny in Willow Park. Kenny, thank you for waiting. How you doing on this Voters' Day?
I'm doing great, Rick. Fixing to go vote here in just a few minutes.
Good.
what I called in about, and I want to state that this is the first time I've ever called in successfully. So it's an honor to speak to you. I listen to your show quite frequently.
Thank you.
Very much a big conservative. And anyway, so I enjoy your program. The reason I'm calling was because I was somewhat moved by the previous caller you had about 10 to 15 minutes ago regarding the situation he had experienced with his son about the mental health
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Can I get a little more volume on this? Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. I'll try to speak a little louder. Anyway, I just wanted to validate from my own personal experiences with my son that this man is 100% correct, could not be more accurate about what he's saying. Because my son had the same exact problems. He was diagnosed schizophrenia, paranoid schizophrenia, bipolar. He had a drug addiction problem. He had been in the state hospital in Wichita Falls. He had been in JPS multiple times, been incarcerated, and even threatened the life of my mother, who he was living with, and the police would not pick him up.
You know, it's almost a carbon copy of the call I received earlier.
It's absolutely correct. I've had him threaten my life, and unfortunately, in our situation, and I'm sure this happens a lot, and I was really moved to call in because this is something that people that are in this situation don't know what to do. And the trauma of dealing with a person like this is unbelievable. And my mother, unfortunately, was codependent, and she would always take in my son, no matter what his behavior was. And I could go on for a long time, and I know you don't have that kind of time.
So if what did you end up doing?
Well, the way our situation changed, and it's very unfortunate that my son, once again, after being discharged from JPS, through the Tarrant County jail downtown, and then he was sent to a facility, I believe it was in Abilene, and they kept him for just a few days and then sent him home on a bus or whatever, or my mother went to pick him up. I don't remember. But in essence, he came back home, and he was as crazy as you could be. You just would not believe the things he could say. He thought he thought he saw God. He walk in the backyard and see stars in the backyard guiding his.
Yeah, he obviously has some mental health issues.
Right. Okay. Well, ultimately, what happened is he got released, came back home, and he OD'd and passed away last year.
Oh man, I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. You didn't get the help you needed.
No, and like I say, I tried the legal system. He had a court-appointed attorney, and this is not something where we passed the buck. He went to several facilities that cost our family over $60,000. And then you just reach a point of despair where you're just throwing good money after bad, and you just stop.
Right.
But I couldn't get my mother to just not take him in, so I had that to deal with. But anyway, it's just a situation where, like I say, once you reach that problem, like I say, he threatened my life, he threatened my mother's life, and the police will come out to the house and you'll tell them all that stuff. So the man saying that, they say, is he a threat to himself or others? That is not accurate. They can say that they're going to kill you and they live in your house and the police will not pick them up for that reason.
Now, listen, I'm very sorry for your loss. And yes, that will be one of the questions that I pose to Governor Abbott tonight. I thank you for the call. And again, man, just a tragic, tragic story, and I'm sorry. By the way, the previous caller was correct. I was looking at the wrong list. The 2018 Republican primary ballot propositions, there are 11, I believe, and 7. It's worded this way: I believe abortion should be abolished in Texas. You can answer yes if that's the way you believe. Let me go ahead and give these to you. Proposition 1, Texas should replace the property tax system with an appropriate consumption tax equivalent. That's one of the primary things that people are talking about, or property tax. Proposition 2, no governmental entity should ever construct or fund construction of toll roads without voter approval. I don't even need to ask you where you're going on that. Proposition 3, Republicans in the Texas House should select their speaker nominee by secret ballot in a binding caucus without Democrat influence. Proposition 4, Texas should require employers to screen new hires through the free E-Verify system to protect jobs for legal workers. Proposition 5, you see how important it is to go out and vote? Okay. Texas families should be empowered to choose from public, private, charter, or homeschool options for their children's education using tax credits or exemptions without government constraints or intrusion. I answer yes, 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 yes. Proposition 6, Texas should protect the privacy and safety of women and children in spaces like bathrooms, locker rooms, showers, in all Texas schools and government buildings. This, of course, because of the transgender issue. Proposition 7, as I said, I believe abortion should be abolished in Texas. Proposition 8, vote fraud should be a felony in Texas to help ensure fair elections. Proposition 9, Texas demands that Congress completely repeal Obamacare. And Proposition 10, to slow the growth of property taxes, yearly revenue increases should be capped at 4%. I know some of you wanted it lower, with increases in excess of 4% requiring voter approval. And finally, Proposition 11, tax dollars should not be used to fund the building of stadiums for professional or semi-professional sports teams. So to that previous caller, my apologies. I was trying to get everything done at one time. And by the way, if you have to go on 35 South, forget it. I'm Rick Roberts, News Talk 820 WBAP.
WBAP Traffic Watch.
If you're headed on I-30 westbound at Chapel Creek Boulevard, roadwork in the right lane, and I-35 east southbound approaching Valley View Lane, it's the rolling construction. 2 right lanes continue to be blocked in that area, so backs up there. We're also seeing the delays Market Center Boulevard slowing to Victory Plaza. With the WBAP Right Now Traffic Watch, I'm Marty Jones.
All right, 2:49 the time. Rick Roberts with you. Glad you're along. I'll be joining Governor Abbott tonight at a watch party, and we're going to have some speakers. It should be a pretty good time. And also I'll be doing a Q&A with Governor Abbott, taking some of your calls. And this mental health issue, man, David, we need to get somebody on from the state that can give us some direction on this. I mean, that last call, man, that breaks your heart. Trying to get help, can't get help, and then his son finally passes away. There's no need for that. Let's go to Mike in Rockwall. Mike, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Mike?
Hey, Rick. Well, first of all, I can relate to all your callers about their sons with the drugs and mental health issue, which brings up what I'm calling about, because I'm an ex-drug addict, ex-felon. Back in the 80s, I took every drug known to man. I went through everything those people are going through, the kids. I know exactly what they're going through. It's a horrible problem. I went to all those institutions that guy was talking about, Wichita Falls, all that stuff. I know exactly what he's talking about. And what I'm calling about is I'm an ex-felon from the 80s. I've been straight, clean, sober, hard-working, honest as the day is long, own a company, friends with police, law-abiding. Worst thing I've gotten is a speeding ticket in 20, 30 years. And what I would like you to ask Governor Abbott is, could he consider some sort of law where people like me who have turned their lives around, paid their debts to society long, long ago, and have proven that we're as normal and functional as anyone else in society, can we have a gun? And like my record still follows me to this day. I had trouble 4 years ago. The wife and I rented an apartment. I couldn't put it in my name. And I've been a homeowner. I've had $100,000 in the bank before. I own a construction company. Well, it's a small painting company. I've been honest, tax-paying, law-abiding for decades. And I had to put the apartment in my wife's name because I had a felony record from the 1980s. And this is ridiculous. I can't even own a gun. I'm defenseless. I can't even defend myself, you know. And but I've been there, like your callers talked about. I know exactly what they're talking about, and I believe. I honestly, I'll tell you what helped me one time long ago. You know, I was addicted to heroin.
Let me stop you for a second. First of all,
okay.
Governor Abbott wouldn't be able, with the stroke of a pen, to restore your gun ownership. That's federal law. According to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, felons whose convictions have been set aside, expunged, or if you've been pardoned or had your civil rights restored, if any of those conditions apply, you're not considered convicted, and thus they could still own a gun. Now, federal law prohibits a convicted felon from purchasing or owning a gun, but there are certain provisions in both federal and state law that can reinstate gun rights. So a 10-year felony-free period after the felon's sentence has been satisfied, and that would include any probation, parole, anything like that. 10 years after that period, then there are some avenues available to you to reinstate your right to own a gun.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll look into that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how long it's been. I don't want to pry into your personal business, but it's a federal.
No, I don't care. That's
well,
fine.
no, I mean, it's federal. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms are pretty stringent on that. There are some state laws involved as well, but if you've been felony free for 10 years and completed without any problems your probation, parole, any supervisory period, if that's long gone and it's been 10 years without a felony, there's some hope for you.
All right. Okay. Yeah, it's been 27 years since I committed a felony.
Then I would look into that. I mean,
and they were all nonviolent. It was theft related to support a drug habit, a horrible drug habit.
Well, again, the ATF. Felons whose convictions have been set aside or expunged, you say it's 27 years. If you've had 10 felony-free years after everything's been completed, you've got some options available to you. And I know the anti-gunners out there don't want me to say that, but that's true. 2:54 the time. Let's step aside Eric Bushman with the very latest breaking news. And, man, you got to get out and vote. You got to do it. The Democrats did early. 98% increase from 2014. So if you think this is going to be a cakewalk, and I'm not trying to be ugly here, but it's not going to be easy. You got to vote. I'm Rick Roberts, back with your calls next.
This is the news and talk of Texas. Now it's the Rick Roberts Show on 820 AM, 99.5 FM, HD2, News Talk 820 WBAP.
Well, I know there's got to be a few 100 million more like me, just trying to keep it free. Yeah.
Rick Roberts starts right now.
All right, 3:04 the time, 4 minutes after the hour. Glad you're along. I'm going to go to producer David so you can figure out how to log on and watch the Facebook Live event. It is tonight. I'll be joining Governor Abbott and some other guest speakers for an election watch party. And then we'll be doing a question and answer period with the governor, so we're taking your questions. But if you'd like to log on, begins at 8:30 tonight, goes until about 10 o'clock. May go a little longer than that. You can watch the whole thing on Facebook. David, tell them how to do that.
It's very easy. You just go to Facebook, and what you're going to do is you're going to add Texans for Greg Abbott. You're going to like that page, and as soon as you like it, at 8:30, whenever they go live on a Facebook Live post, it will send you an update on your computer, on your tablet or on your cell phone, and you can watch it there, and you can also interact with the audience or with people that are talking at the same time.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty cool. Begins at 8:30. Alex Trevino will kick the whole thing off, and then I will be giving an analysis on the evening. Then Alex back. We'll be doing this all evening long, and then later in the day, or later in the evening, I should say, I'll be doing a back and forth with Governor Abbott on the things that concern you. We'll wrap the thing up. We're going to try and wrap it up at 10 o'clock tonight. So beginning at 8:30 until 10 o'clock tonight, it is a live Facebook event with Governor Greg Abbott. All right, let's get to your calls. Annie in Bonham. Annie, thank you for waiting. How you doing, Annie?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
I had two main comments. One was just the last caller about his felony conviction. I thought that was excellent advice you gave him. But further, I kind of feel like I'm sorry that happened to you, but there are consequences. And I think that's why people need to be very careful about the way they live their lives, because there are consequences that affect them for the rest of their life. And that's kind of my opinion on that. I kind of think that those gun restrictions are there for a reason. But number two, I'm very concerned about the state of Texas turning blue. I've lived here my whole life. I'm a fifth-generation Texan, and I've seen the state dramatically change culturally, and that, of course, leads to politically over the last about 25 years. And I think two things are at play here. I think our school districts, our education system, a lot of the indoctrination is very liberal, and I think it's infested the schools, the colleges, and things like that. And going through college and going through part of the Texas teaching college, I can tell you that it's just being ground into students. And
I believe that. I do believe that.
When you have that, so you have a very liberal agenda being ground into students. And, of course, when they go to college, it's reground in and confirmed, and then they become voters. And number two is, and I say this, I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but we have a lot of people coming in here from out of state, and I will say California. And we all joke about Californians moving in here, but it's true. When you have people that come from a very highly regulated state, and they come here because we're business friendly, their company transfers them, whatever it may be, a lot of times they bring their regulation-minded politics with them.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt
that's what's coloring the state. I really do.
Buck Knives was one of the first companies to leave the state of California because of their, over-aggressive regulations, their heavy-handedness, their taxes. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And what they found as they moved out into different areas, they found that the employees pretty much had that same mindset. Many of them thought they died and went to heaven based on the taxation in the new states. But you're right. When people come from other places, doesn't matter whether it's a country or a state, they bring with them the filters that they have used, whether it's taxes or employment or regulations, and it sort of worms its way into the mindset of the state they move to.
It does. We have neighbors. I mean, my husband's boss, who's my husband's boss, is from San Diego. He's all about Obama. He was, at least when he was in. And, but he can afford a nice home, and his taxes are low. But there seems to be some just disconnect between why it's like that. It's like they don't seem to make the connection that there's free regulation, therefore the populace is more prosperous. And I think that's really a problem. I've never seen so many California places in my life. My husband's not from Texas, and he asked me, has it always been this way? And I said, no. And it's just like when you have a lot of urban people that move way into the rural areas, like in our neck of the woods, we get the same mentality. We get people who move here from Dallas, and they call the county sheriff because the guys tilling up his field, and it's getting dust on their lawn.
Exactly. It's, having grown up in the country, I lived in a place at one time And the place was just stupid with coyotes. And if you haven't grown up in the country, then you don't know how bad. I mean, they're just disease riddled. They'll kill your dogs. They'll chase your kids, and they become domesticated very easily. And these people moved in. I don't know. It was about 5 miles away, I guess, maybe not that far. And they had moved in from Chicago. And so they thought the coyotes were, oh my gosh, look at all the wildlife. And they started feeding the stupid things. And that's the worst thing you can do. I was out in the corral. I was doing something, cleaning a horse's hoof or something, because I had my back to him. And, he's used to getting fed. He walked right through that 3-rail corral right up to me. Had I been close to a gun, he would have been gone. But I, scared him off. I mean, these people even had those. You've seen those sheet metal things people put in their front yard that look like animals. What do you call those things? Sheet metal things that look like animals. They had a bunch of coyotes made out of sheet metal because they thought they were. And these people had kids, and I said, "Don't do this. Do not do this." I'll tell you exactly what it's like. I lived in Evergreen, Colorado, for 12 years or so. It's when I worked at KOA, downtown Denver. But I lived up in the mountains. I lived on Bear Mountain, as a matter of fact. And this guy moves in, and he was from New York, New Jersey, or someplace. And he had a pair of really nice-looking Rottweiler dogs. And he puts up, I see him putting this thing up, and I'm thinking, well, surely, these are inside dogs, or he's, got a huge 3-car garage. Maybe they're in there. No, he's going to put them in this chain link kennel with no top. And I said, no, you don't do that here in the mountains. Well, nothing's going to bother these dogs. They're tough. And I said, yeah, we have bears here. That's the same reason why when you get through cooking out at night, you put the grill inside the garage, because it attracts wildlife. And sure enough, he, went to town, as we say, went to Denver, came back, and those dogs were, some bear's dinner. I mean, they just right over the top inside those. I don't care what kind of dog you have. It's, no match for a bear. Yeah, people, wherever they come from, have a tendency to bring their mindset with them. And honestly, we welcome you to Texas. We truly do. But we don't want your California mindset or your New York mindset or your New Jersey mindset. We don't have bears. You don't need to worry about that. But you get what I'm saying. I mean, people have a mindset of where they grew up, and that's only natural. But it can lead to some pretty bad mistakes. 3:13 the time. I'm Rick Roberts, News Talk 820 WBAP. All right, 18 minutes after the hour, 3:18 the time. I wanted to mention this before I forgot. I'm going to get to your calls, I promise, your questions for the governor. As we continue to look for ways to protect students and teachers for that matter, from the possibility of an active shooter on Kansas, somebody sent me an email, and I don't know why I forgot this. In Oklahoma schools, Oklahoma being Tornado Alley for the most part, I've been in 4 myself, and they're terrifying. We out on the property at one time, I had what we used as a storm shelter was it was an old well house. It had 2 cinder block deep built into the side of a hill there. It had the heavy steel doors with the wired glass that you couldn't punch out with a sledgehammer. That's normally where the kids went when there was a tornado in the area. Well, schools, and there have been hundreds of kids killed, unfortunately, with tornadoes in Oklahoma public schools. So what they started doing, they started building I don't know if you know what an EF5 is. An EF5 tornado basically means if you're going to survive, you got to be underground. Anything above ground is gone. And they started building these in schools. You may remember, was it 2014 or 13? Just a horrific situation in Moore, Oklahoma, where some of the kids drowned because it was horrible. I won't go into it. But what they started doing was building these safe rooms as tornado shelters, and they're saying with a little tweaking, they could be bulletproof, and they can keep up to 35 students and 2 teachers safe from an active shooter or an EF5 tornado all at the same time. And I'd forgotten about that. I don't know why, but I was reminded by an email. Maybe that's in addition. There is no one answer that's going to take care of everything, but certainly be worth looking into. These things were originally started to keep the students safe. It for some reason, it seems like in Oklahoma, the tornadoes always come in around 2:30, 3 o'clock, 3:30, and I'm sure it has to do with the weather, but, kids generally are still in school, so they're thinking maybe they could tweak those and make them safe rooms as well. All right, back to your calls. Your questions for the governor. I'll be with Governor Abbott tonight for an election watch party. Paul in Plano. Paul, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Paul?
Good. Great show, Rick.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was the fellow that called about being a felon and not being able to get a gun. I just spoke with an attorney yesterday, and after you served your sentence, probation, whatever it is, 5 years after that time, you can own a gun again.
Well, you can make application for a gun.
Okay.
I mean, there's a difference between just going out and buying one and making application. There's several things you have to go through. The Second Amendment's pretty blatant that everyone has a right to keep and bear arms. One of the circumstances that prohibit that is if you're a convicted felon, and quite honestly, felons find it very difficult to have their applications for. You have to make application to have your firearm rights accepted. In other words, it's basically, the easy way to do it would be to be pardoned or expunged, and then that does away with the conviction. But if they were convicted of violent crimes, and if they had, a criminal record, it's hard, but it's not impossible to legally own a gun. But you've got to figure out who charged you with the crime. That's called adjudication, whether it was a state or a federal offense. There are potential pitfalls throughout this thing. It's easier to get civil rights restored if a felony conviction was given by a state court rather than a federal court. I'm not going to bore you to death with all that, but you have to make application to have that right restored.
Okay, I didn't know that. It's not. The attorney didn't mention that. He just said after 5 years, you're good again.
No, it's not that simple. Now, he may be talking about a specific case at a state level, but the federal law is 10 years.
Okay, well, I appreciate it.
Did he say hire me at the end of it? No, I'm kidding.
No.
I'm kidding. No, it's
No.
it can be. It's not impossible, but it's tough. I mean, there are things you have to go to. You got to make application. They don't make it easy for you or whomever. It's like I said, it's easier to get done if the conviction was given by a state court rather than a federal court. But a problem comes up when a state law conflicts with federal law, which are often more strict and may take precedence even if the conviction was ruled by the state itself. If that's the case, or if a felon had his conviction given by a federal agency, then they have to file with the U.S. Attorney General's office or the BATF. The agency then reviews the application to restore the right to bear arms. The problem then becomes that this agency is absolutely notorious for simply failing to review the documents. So that leaves the former felon in sort of a legal limbo while waiting for their firearm rights to be restored. This is the case even if felons were not guilty of violent crime convictions. The only other federal recourse that I'm aware of, and I didn't practice criminal law, but the only other federal recourse is to petition for a presidential pardon. And, come on. That process requires the assistance of attorneys. They can restore a variety of civil rights, include the right to hold public office, just ask about half the people in D.C. No, I'm kidding. I don't know that they're convicted felons. Now, I'll get a call from legal on that. 3:25 the time. Check with him. I let him go before I found out whether he had a question. Check and see if he's got a question for Governor Abbott I can carry to the meeting tonight. I'm Rick Roberts. Your call straight ahead. Let's check with Eric Bushman, the very latest breaking news, and check that afternoon drive. All right, welcome back. 3:32 the time. Glad you're along. It's going to be a good night tonight, I think. If Republicans get out and vote, a 98% increase in Democrat voter turnout from 2014. That's early voting, obviously. And I'm hoping most Republicans haven't voted yet because they all have jobs they're working and are going to go do it after they get off. I'll be with the governor tonight, along with some other guest speakers, and looking forward to it. I've got some time set aside to spend with the governor for question and answers, if you will. So if you've got a question, the mental health issue was one that has been echoed by several callers. I'll be asking that. And if as a matter of fact, we've got an entire list from yesterday's show as well. The event is tonight. It is beginning at 8:30, goes till 10 o'clock tonight. It's a Facebook Live event through the governor's office, so everybody in the nation will be able to take part. You'll be able to interact as well here in Texas. So just go to the, as a matter of fact, I'll have David tell you how to sign on at 8:30, how you can get an alert to your smartphone, your tablet, your laptop, whatever it happens to be. John in Denton. John, thank you for waiting. How you doing, John?
Good, sir. How are you?
I'm well, thanks.
My question, for Governor Abbott, is I don't think Congress and Trump are going to do anything about illegal immigration. So does he have a plan, or his inner circle have a plan to battle illegal immigration specifically for Texas when Congress fails to pass a law?
Well, I mean, the wall is, they've already started building the wall. You know that, right?
No, I was unaware of that.
Yeah, in several, they're not starting at one end of the United States and going across to the other. I think maybe that's where some people got the idea that, the wall is a failed experiment. They've started building the wall in, I think it's 8 different locations. And, they were looking at prototypes, and I think they're still looking at prototypes. I mean, if you look, and I've been to the border several times when I broadcasted out of San Diego, if you look at the topography, just building a wall, it's not like you and I would do in our backyard. I mean, you've got valleys, and you've got, not mountains, but hills, you've got water. There's a lot that's going to go into building some kind of barrier. It's not just as easy as, back up the concrete truck and start pouring. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
As a matter of fact, you can even Google some of those prototypes that they're looking at right now. Now, is that the final end-all, be-all to the wall? No. There's still funding issues, still all kinds of issues about it. But I don't know that it's totally accurate to say Trump's not going to ever move on immigration. Congress is never going to move on immigration. I think they will. I think it'll be somewhat limited. But your question is, what does the governor plan to do if the federal government drags its feet?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I plan on asking that question because remember Jan Brewer, governor of Arizona?
No, I don't.
Now, she was sued not once, not twice, but 3 times by the federal government for doing what? Doing the government's job. She took the federal law, codified it to a state level, because at one point, Phoenix became the kidnapping capital of the world with drug dealers coming across. And so she petitioned. They wouldn't do anything. So she codified the law, down to a state level and started implementing it herself. And the federal government sued her for it.
Oh, that's the American way. So
that's right. Yeah, an attorney in both back pockets. I will ask the question, John. Thank you very much. Let's go to George. George, thank you for waiting. I appreciate it. How you doing, George?
Rick Roberts. God bless you, sir.
Thank you.
Relating to the discussions from a couple of callers a few minutes back relating to the mental health issue and the school violence.
Right.
I had a personal experience with a relative who had a psychotic break while living with me in my home. It's amazing to me that I don't see more discussion relating to that particular aspect of what's going on, because every one of the school shooters had mental issues. I don't hear any discussion in any aspect relating to that. What I would like to find out, and if you can ask the governor, what is the considered prognosis for mental illness, and how are we going to deal with that? How are we going to educate the public at large to be able to identify the potential of a psychotic break and the violence that comes from it?
That's a tall order.
Yes, it is. And that's probably why we're not hearing any discussion. I don't hear any professional commentary. None of the psychiatrists seem to want to get into the mix and have an intelligent dialogue. We need that. We need it badly.
Yeah, I think from a state level, mental illness, as you probably know, I mean, it's a huge, broad, wide range of health conditions. Disorders affect your mood, thinking, behavior. Depression, anxiety, schizophrenia. Even getting into eating disorders, which I don't think we're too worried about when it comes to active shooters. Addictive behaviors. Many people have mental health concerns from time to time. Does that mean they're clinically at a level where they need to be institutionalized? I don't have the answers to that. I mean, that is, I suppose you look at it from a federal level. Social Security has a disability handbook known as, I think it's called the Blue Book. The only way I remembered that is because that's what the UFO thing was. It was formerly the Disability Evaluation, blah, blah, blah. It contains criteria for different mental disorders to be considered disabilities, like mental disorders like schizophrenia, mental retardation. I know that's an antiquated term, but they have to determine, what you have before you can be paid disability pay. The most serious type of mental disorder, and I only know this through an interview I did, it involves psychosis, losing touch with what you and I call reality, or having delusions or that kind of thing. It's manic depressive. Most common severe mental illness, schizophrenia, bipolar, manic depressive. Now, that's above my pay grade when it comes to, telling people or offering advice on how to get somebody evaluated. But they should be evaluated. It's, what can the state do? I don't know. I have long been for bringing back institutions that in no small part liberalism got rid of, because that's not right. It's not fair. It doesn't have good optics, and the men in the white coats and all that kind of stuff. Well, what are you going to do with people that could take advantage of something like that need to be medicated, need to be supervised? What are you going to do without that? Well, right now, asking questions is about all you can do. But I will ask the question, George. I promise you that. 3:42 the time. 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. Your calls straight ahead. 3:45 the time. Hoping you're having a good afternoon. Nice day, isn't it? It's going to get cold, but then it's going to get warm again. Welcome to Texas. Let's go to Gene in Temple. Gene, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Gene?
Doing well, thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Got a question for the governor and a question for yourself. I forgot to mention that today, but my question for the governor, if the sheriffs of each county, who is the top law official of each county, can choose which laws they want to enforce and which laws they don't want to enforce just because they don't like them, where's my incentive to obey certain laws that I don't like?
Okay, you're going to have to be more specific with me. What are you talking about?
Well, the Travis County Sheriff, the Dallas County Sheriff, to enforce immigration, they want to become sanctuary cities. They don't. That's a law on the books, but yet they don't want to enforce it, so they choose not to enforce it.
Well, I ask, I don't know if we can pull that up or not, David, when I had Mayor Rawlings on about whether Dallas was a sanctuary city or not. He says absolutely not. And I specifically ask him, so you're telling me that law enforcement will cooperate with ICE in all ways? And he said yes. Now, whether you can tell me anything on the radio, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to play out in the field. But you're saying if the sheriff's department can opt out of this sanctuary city mentality, why should you have to follow certain rules or laws as well?
That's exactly right. So if they're the top example of law-abiding citizens, then and they just pick and choose as their will, then where is our incentive to be law-abiding citizens for something? I don't like the 55-mile speed limit in the interior street in the city, so why should I not be able to go as fast as I want to?
Well, I know you're asking with your tongue firmly planted in your cheek,
yes,
because
absolutely.
To say they pick and choose what laws they want to enforce, that's not accurate, and you know that. But the issue of sanctuary cities, that's a very focused, specific issue that needs to be resolved by law enforcement.
What about the Travis County Sheriff who decided not to?
You know, it still remains to be seen what consequence, and there will be a consequence for that. I'm not here to say what it is, but there will be a consequence for that. As you know, I have family in law enforcement, so I'm pro law enforcement. I have a bias, but when it comes to the sanctuary city status and situation, I think that both sides need to be heard. I mean, some of these people, some of these law enforcement agencies, depending on where they are, they can't even afford vests for their beat cops. I think if we're talking about, okay, will you dedicate your personnel to go on a chase with ICE, I don't think that's reasonable. Making a phone call, I don't think that takes up much of anybody's time.
I understand. And the second question I had last time we talked, you had made mention of Maxine Waters perhaps moving to our area, and I panicked. But I got thinking about it after we got off the phone. That would be absolutely wonderful because in our county, in our district, we've sent some goofballs up to Washington, no doubt. But I think once she moved to our neighborhood, that would be a blessing for the state because we would have common sense not to reelect that embarrassment to humanity and intelligent thinkers.
Well, yeah, that's Maxine Waters and I have gone toe-to-toe several times. And it's like arguing, and I'm not calling her a dog, but it's like arguing with your dog. You know, they tilt their head like they're trying to understand what you're saying, but nothing's getting through.
Exactly.
And if she moved to Texas and wanted to continue her political career, I'm afraid it would be the shortest political career on record because nobody in Texas would reelect her.
Well, arguing with her is like arguing with a pig. You both get muddy, but the pig enjoys it.
That's good. Gene, I appreciate the call very much. Sanctuary cities on the list for Governor Abbott. Let's go to Nathan in Arlington. Nathan, thank you for waiting. How you doing, Nathan?
I'm doing well. Thank you for taking my call.
You bet.
Couple questions. First one, I'm troubled about the trend of of certain governments other than federal government, and or these corporations raising the age to buy a gun to 21. Constitutionally, you become a citizen at 18, correct?
Well, it depends on what state you're in, but you're talking about age of majority.
Is that what that means? So it's not a firm number?
No, it's age of majority, and I'm thinking, and man, it's been so long. I'm thinking there's a different age for different things. Like in some states, you can get married at 16 or 17. Everybody can be drafted at 18. You can drink at 18 in some states, 21 in other states.
Those aren't rights. Those aren't constitutional rights.
No, of course not.
I'm speaking of constitutional rights. You become a citizen at 18, and you have the constitutional rights. So how does a company decide arbitrarily not to sell guns to somebody just based on age? That's the sole reason. Seems to me that's exclusionary and would be against the Constitution.
You know, I got to think about that for a second. That's
50 years ago, didn't we have trouble with selling people because of the color, doing business with people because of just the color of their skin? How's this different?
No, I see where you're going with that. That's
that people come back and argue and say, well, you can't drink till you're 21, but that's not a constitutional right. That's a privilege.
You know, the Constitution applies to everyone, sort of.
Right.
Generally speaking, the Constitution applies to everyone, no matter what their age is, or their race, or their religion, or other factors. But minors don't always enjoy full constitutional rights, correct? I mean, we know that.
Okay, so you're saying a minor under 21.
Right, well, a minor, depending on the state.
Okay.
You know, you look at minors, are they protected by the Constitution? Well, yes, but what are the rights of a minor? Specifically, is it a breach of the First Amendment for a school, a private school, a public school, to require its students to wear a uniform, follow a dress code, and all those kind of things? You've got to look at this. You got to look at this and say, okay, at what age are you fully vested in the Constitution?
That's what I'm asking, because I thought that once you turned 18, you could vote, that you're a citizen.
Right.
Therefore, you should have all constitutional rights.
Well,
That's my viewpoint.
Let's take. I've only got a minute here, but I want to explore this. You know, some gun law experts are saying the Second Amendment prevents Trump from putting a ban on young people buying AR-15 style rifles. Right. Well,
right.
Trump endorsed limiting the sales to adults 21 and older. Right. So that you look at that. Would that strike down a purchase ban affecting 18 to 20-year-olds? Well, the Second Amendment doesn't mention age, obviously, and views varying on its precise meaning. But over the past, 10, 15 years, courts have taken an expansive view, and I know I'm getting into legalese here. I don't mean to bore you, but the Supreme Court recognized a right to own handguns, and many lower courts easing the concealed carry rules. So some federal courts have dealt with the different firearm age limit, upholding the 21-year-old age limit. That'd be something, see, this is how boring I am. I could get into something like this over the weekend, try to figure it out. I don't think it can be figured out because I think there's too many court decisions.
Right. There's precedent. However, I thought that's what the Constitution was. It was an overrider of that sort of thing. So,
well, the argument has been made that Congress, seriously interfered with this age group, these younger people, their constitutional rights because of class-based determination that applies to, at best, a tiny percentage of lawmakers or lawbreakers, or maybe I should say lawmakers. I look at this. Man, I can see another battle brewing over just this. But as far as
absolutely,
as far as the Constitution goes, it's supposed to apply to everyone, regardless of age, color, creed, religion, and so on.
Exactly.
And then the states, they can come in. Well, you're not going to let a 15-year-old go buy a gun, but they have set 18 and 21. Is that constitutional? Okay.
Well, you can join their army at 17. So does that mean the guy or gal that signs up can't carry a gun until they're 18?
That's the argument, and I've heard that argument several times. I got to step aside very quickly. Eric Bushman is standing by in the WBAP newsroom. Very interesting question, Nathan. I'm salivating like Pavlov's dog here, trying to figure out, okay, where can I get that information? Your call straight ahead.
This is the news and talk of Texas. Now, it's the Rick Roberts Show on 820 AM, 99.5 FM, HD2, News Talk 820, WBAP.
Well, I know there's got to be a few 100 million more like me, just trying to keep it free. Yeah.
Rick Roberts starts right now.
All right, glad you're along. Special night tonight. It will be a Facebook Live event from the governor's office. I've been invited to join the governor and some other guest speakers doing some analyzing of the races. And then toward the end, the governor has carved out some time so we can do a Q&A. Therefore, if you've got a question you would like posed to Governor Abbott, I'll try to get as many in as I possibly can. 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. And as I said, it is a Facebook Live event, and it begins at 8:30 tonight. And we're looking probably about 10 o'clock for it to wrap up. So between 8:30 and 10, if you'd like to view, and you can interact, by the way, we'll be taking some of your questions off of Facebook. This is how you go about logging on.
Okay, what you'll do, you'll go to Facebook, and once in the search bar, you'll look for @Texans for Greg Abbott. Go ahead and like that page. Once you get that like, you'll get an update. Every time that they go live, they will send you an update, and all you have to do is click that button. It'll be on your cell phone, your computer, or your tablet.
And again, it's Texans for Governor Greg Abbott, correct?
Texans for Greg Abbott.
Texans for Greg Abbott, like that. And
Yes,
then
sir.
when the whole thing gets kicked off, you'll get an alert.
Yes.
And you can dip in and out if you like. I don't know how many of you want to hear a bunch of people talk, but we'll be talking about some pretty interesting things. That last caller put me in mind. I should probably know this. I was emancipated at 15 and a half, not quite 16. That makes up a certain dynamic within, a private business can do whatever they want. They can say, well, I'd want to sell to people unless they're 21. I mean, nobody can keep them from doing that. The Supreme Court declined to review the Fifth Circuit decision. So it left the age limit question kind of up in the air. There have been tons of attorneys involved with gun rights litigation. Michael Connolly, he's the executive director of the U.S. Justice Foundation. That's a public interest law firm, supports gun rights. He said he thinks the effort to ban people between 18 and 21 from purchasing AR-15s would be very vulnerable to a Second Amendment challenge. I think he's right, especially in light of the current makeup of the Supreme Court. The Second Amendment does not provide an age limit. It simply states that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed upon. It must be remembered, if you want to go back that far, at the time preceding the Revolution, most colonies required men 16 and older to be in the militia, and not only that, they had to provide their own firearms. Thus, there was no age limit on their ownership put in the Constitution. By contrast, there was an age limit for voting, and it had to be changed by the passage of the 26th Amendment. Most everybody knows that. Therefore, unless Congress and 3/4 of the states choose to amend the Constitution and place an age limit on the Second Amendment, the simple passage of legislation to do so would probably not pass constitutional muster. It probably wouldn't happen at all. the military pulls heavily from the 18 to 20-year-old age group, like the previous caller said, and that's saying this same group is too immature to own certain firearms. That'd be a tough argument to make. Wait a minute, this age group, 18 to 20, is too immature to own a firearm or purchase a firearm, but we can put the nation's security in their hands. Okay. There's obviously an argument, well, they're supervised, they're this, they're that. The proposed ban on federally licensed dealers selling rifles, that including the AR-15 to persons in the 18 to 20 age group, that would probably violate the Second Amendment as it's written. I don't think you're going to get a lot of people saying, hey, let's amend the Second Amendment. I mean, you get a lot of uber liberals that would do that, but that's about it. In addition to legal claims of Second Amendment protection for young adults, people could challenge a ban on equal protection grounds, arguing wrongful discrimination based on age, couldn't they? Man, talk about a can of worms. All right, let's go to Mike. Mike, thank you for waiting. How you doing, Mike?
All right. I was wanting to go back on that, on the age.
I can barely hear you, Mike.
I was wanting to go back to that on the age of the gun. You're saying the private business has the right to deny you, but wouldn't that be age discrimination there?
It could be. It could be, but there is no federal law or state law that says, okay, Dick Sporting Goods, you have to sell to 18-year-olds. Somebody could say, hey, I claim age discrimination because they won't sell me a gun.
I mean, same as the cake factory, the cake bakery deal.
Yeah, same deal. Yeah, same dynamic. Obviously, a different set of circumstances.
Right. Yeah, it seems like it's falling to age discrimination out there. It's the same as selling or renting somebody a house.
Yeah, that's why I don't think raising the age to 21 is going to happen with the AR or any other rifle. Raising the gun age is probably constitutional if you wanted to go about it in the right way. But the Second Amendment is limited to law-abiding adults, right?
Correct.
While the Supreme Court has not said what age limit are appropriate for the Second Amendment, they're probably not going to say that the Second Amendment is offended by banning 18 to 21-year-olds from purchasing rifles. This is a can of worms I don't think Congress has any appetite for.
I wanted to share with you on Facebook, and I couldn't figure out how to do it, but there is already a USA Today story that somebody in Oregon has already filed a lawsuit against Dick's and Walmart for the age discrimination.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be others. Trump told reporters, what was it, yesterday maybe, that he believed the National Rifle Association would back the age limit increase. I don't think they will.
No, I don't believe it's right.
So
you should be able to protect yourself just as well as anybody else if you're over the age 18.
Mike, I appreciate the call very much. Steve in Fort Worth. Steve, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Steve?
Hey, Rick, thanks for taking my call, and I want to weigh in on the same conversation with a little slight angle on it. Okay, I'm a 24-year Navy veteran. I voted for Trump. I support Trump on most of everything he does, except this. He's the commander-in-chief of the military forces. He's the president of the United States. He can put a gun in an 18 to 21-year-old's hand and tell him to go defend the nation, and then turn around and say, oh, when you go home, yeah, you can't fire a weapon. We don't trust you. That's absolutely ridiculous. He needs to rethink that. He's wrong.
I'll be honest with you. I think I don't think he thought that statement through. I think he thought in the wake of, and that's the worst time to make any kind of legislative decision after a horrific shooting, whether it's at a school or anywhere else, because emotions are running too high. I think he was just grasping at something. And, like a few things he's had to do, I think he's going to have to walk this one back.
He ought to retract it and apologize to the military forces because he just slapped all those 18 to 21-year-olds in the face.
Well, listen, I appreciate the call, Steve. Got to step aside. We'll check your afternoon drive. If you have a question for Governor Abbott tonight, we'll take your question, type it up. I'll carry it with me. We'll do that next on News Talk 820 WBAP. 4:18 the time. I'm Rick Roberts. This is News Talk 820 WBAP, 1-800-288-WBAP. 1-800-288-9227. Let's go to Scott. Scott in Fort Worth. Scott, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Rick. I love your show. Hey, I wanted to pitch in on this passing the laws for 18 to 20-year-olds. There is no way. That is absolutely unconstitutional. We have a very specific right to bear arms, and the Constitution also recognizes who we can discriminate against. And it also recognizes what is the legal age. It recognizes 18 years old as a legal age. It recognizes who we can discriminate against and who basically, not who we can't discriminate against.
Right.
And age, sex, religion, race, creed are amongst those. This is absolutely no different than if Walmart or Dick's Sporting Goods said, I'm not going to sell to women, or I'm not going to sell to Muslims. It's no different. These people, an 18-year-old has a legal right to bear arms, and they can't discriminate against them. No way.
Well, let me throw something else in the mix. Some federal courts have dealt with a different firearm age limit. They upheld the 21-year-old age requirement for what? Handguns. Handguns that are sold by licensed dealers. That rule passed Congress in the Gun Control Act of 1968. That was a long time before the AR-15 became one of the most popular weapons out there, and doesn't ban young adult handguns.
If it was challenged again in the Supreme Court, it would be struck down.
Well, let me give you what happened. There was a 2013 dissent by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, that Judge Edith Jones, and I agreed with her dissent. She wrote that Congress seriously interfered with that age group's constitutional rights because of a class-based determination that applied to, just a fraction of lawbreakers out there. And she said, lawbreakers still obtain handguns, but the law-abiding young adults are prevented from doing so, which adds an unusual, and she called it perverse, twist to the constitutional analysis. So what happened? The Supreme Court declined to review the Fifth Court decision. So the age limit question is unsettled when it comes to handguns. You can't buy it unless you're 21.
Well, and this is where I think if the Supreme Court took it up, it would be stricken down. If you piggyback on that and you think in terms of the laws for the 18-year-olds, and compare it to outlawing guns for females, it wouldn't be heard of. It'd be absolutely dropped.
I think it's more. What's the word I'm looking for? The compare and contrast. I think is more.
I believe it's socially acceptable for a lot of people to say, "Well, an 18-year-old."
This is how we look at it. By contrast, there was an age limit for voting, and it had to be changed by the passage of the 26th Amendment. And therefore, unless Congress and 3/4 of the states choose to amend the Constitution and place an age limit on the Second Amendment, the simple passage of legislation to do that is probably not going to be constitutional. So it's kind of a moot point, isn't it?
I just don't see how it could pass the muster on constitutional rights.
Well, that's exactly right. I don't think it will.
And a good example is on the flip side is what could we discriminate against, on selling guns? Well, if you're a felon, that's not a protected class, so felons, they can make that law and say you can't have a gun. But an 18-year-old, females, race, religion, it doesn't matter what it is. They have the right to have guns.
Well, look, I'm with you in the sense that I don't think it would pass a test of constitutionality. I don't think it would happen. The proposed ban on federally licensed dealers selling rifles, including the AR-15. And by the way, for people that know nothing about firearms, there's probably 100, 200 other rifles that look just as scary as the AR-15, but they're all the same. They're not automatic. They're not fully automatic. But banning the sale to 18 to 20-year-old age groups, I think that violates the Second Amendment. Unless you want to change the Second Amendment. I mean, remember, at the time of the founding of this country, 18 was the age for membership in the militia. You could join at 16. but 18 was the age. Under the Federal Militia Acts of 1792 and all the militia laws, which I don't know, each militiaman, I do know this, was required to provide his own musket or rifle. You know, today 18-year-olds can join the military and they can vote. They are emancipated citizens. That's what they are. I remember after I left the boys' ranch, I had to get a legal emancipation so I could enter into a lease or just about anything that normally you would take for granted. Now, and the lease didn't apply because I got to stay in an apartment that a friend of mine's dad owned. But there's going to be significant pushback to any rifle sale ban on the 18 to 20 age group, as that's never been illegal in U.S. history. You know, there was never a pushback on the handgun sales limitation to 21-year-olds only, as that had been in the law in a number of states before 1968. If it came up again, would it pass the constitutional test? Probably not. But I think we get bogged down in, well, is this constitutional? Is that constitutional? What are we going to do now? I think you need to, I'm just saying this as a guy, you know, living in the same neighborhood you do, not as a talk show host, and not going to pontificate as an expert because I'm not. But I would suggest that we wait a while, let the emotion settle from this latest horrific shooting, do some things that we can do immediately that we all can come to a general consensus on, and then we can deal with this later. I don't think you're going to be successful constitutionally banning rifles from 18 to 20-year-olds. And to get in the big middle of that right now doesn't make sense. 4:25 the time. I'm Rick Roberts. Eric Bushman standing by in the WBAP newsroom, the very latest breaking news, and your calls and your questions for Governor Abbott. That's next. 4:32 the time. I'm Rick Roberts. This is the Court of Public Opinion. Your voice, your opinion, your attitude on the issues of the day. I'll be joining Governor Abbott tonight for a watch event. It's a Facebook Live event, and you can dip in or dip out. You can be interactive with us. A lot of guest speakers. Should be a pretty good time taking your questions for the governor. And David, tell people if they want to log on, how they can be a part of this, watch what's going on. It's a live Facebook event by the governor's office, and should be a pretty good time. Tell people how to do that.
Not a problem, Rick. What they're going to do is they're going to go to Facebook, and in the search bar, they'll use @Texans for Greg Abbott. Once you go to that page, hit the like button, and once you like the page at 8:30 when we go live, you will get an update automatically on your cell phone, your tablet, or your computer, and you can watch it from there.
All right. And you can interact as well with the speakers and the governor, so it should be a good time. Let's
it'll
go
be
to
open forum.
Beg your pardon?
It will be an open forum.
Alice in Argyle. Alice, thank you for waiting. How you doing, Alice?
Doing great. Thanks for taking my call.
You bet.
I just wanted to talk about or put the information out there that there is a backdoor threat to our Second Amendment rights and our children's Second Amendment rights because of federal legislation that passed in 2015. It's the Every Student Succeeds Act that replaced No Child Left Behind. And what it does is it mandates psychological profiling on our children through things like positive behavioral intervention and supports. So they are collecting all this data on our children, and then the state and federal government uses the excuse of evidence-based policymaking that they need access to this data, and then all these systems are interoperable. What that's doing is setting up a dossier on every American from preschool through the workforce. Because when they say Every Student Succeeds Act, they use the term lifelong learning. So that means every student. If you go in to get a certification for your realtor's license, if you go in to get any kind of license, you're being psychologically profiled. And if that dossier shows that you should not own a gun, the state and federal government uses that psychological data against you.
All right.
Has the ability to.
Yeah, the possibility.
Yes.
The Texas Education Agency, the TEA, formally submitted to the U.S. Department of Education the Every Student Succeeds Act. It was a consolidated plan. Oh, gosh, they did it in 2017. It was last year. In Texas, it provides what they're calling a unique opportunity for the TEA to chart a path for shifting key decisions related to accountability. That's what they're saying. School improvement, teacher quality, funding back to the state, funding at a local level. They played down any of this psychological profiling. Now, that's not true in California. But I have gone through the TEA, and I haven't seen anything that scared me to death about it, to be honest with you, in Texas. I won't say that.
Well, it's tied to our Texas standards, which are now aligned to the College and Career Ready Common Core standards. So those standards that we have in place in Texas are behavioral standards. The assessments that will be given when it's called the next generation of assessments and accountability. The number one recommendation on that is online digital learning and assessments, and they're formative assessments. It's not like an end-of-course test in math, did you know 2 + 2 is 4?
Right.
They're formative, and so they're benchmarking and they're assessing using computer software programs that are collecting all that data on our kids. And it's the assessments and they're actually assessments and instruction. And they're most certainly implementing it in Texas. At the Next Generation of Assessments Commission meeting, our Commissioner, Mike Morath, called for Texas standards to be psychological character standards, meaning if they're called TEKS, Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, if they're standards and they're non-cognitive character standards, then the state has to assess to make sure that you're complying to their character standards.
Well, I have seen, and we are talking over a lot of people's heads, but I have seen recommendations for this law or this assessment. It also drew on psychological research to inform education policy with the goal of creating better opportunities for learning and achievement of all students and so on. I don't buy any of it. And that's why I'm no, it's not the only reason, but it's one of the reasons I'm such an advocate of get your kids out of public school. And I have nothing bad to say about public school teachers. I'm not a big fan of the teachers union, but I have nothing bad to say about the teachers. I don't like public education because I don't like being in bed with the government. I just, they even set a pamphlet out what psychologists could do. Get involved in the planning at your school district or state level. Share the valuable information you know about engaging students so they thrive academically. You know what? Leave my kids' psychological assessment alone. Teach them to read, write, and do arithmetic. Does that sound too antiquated? I don't think so. All right. Good call. I appreciate it very, very much. Mark in Mansfield. Mark, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Mark?
How you doing, Rick? Thank you very much for having me on the call, a long-time listener. I had a couple interesting points to make with what we're talking about. First of all, I do have an FFL. And an FFL, and I was told this directly by the ATF, that if you for any reason do not feel comfortable transferring the firearm, you do not have to.
Right. Well, FFL, you're talking about a federal firearms license.
That's correct. That's correct. So I just wanted to say that, with these like dicks and stuff like that, they can do that legally without, whatever discrimination.
Yeah, I think legally the word is at their discretion. I could be wrong, but I think that that's the legal loophole where they can, set the purchase age at whatever they want. It's a private business.
Right, exactly. And the second point I was wanting to make was kind of with the difference between being able to purchase versus ownership. The interesting point that kind of segues into firearms is I've owned firearms since I was 6 years old and shot my entire life, and I'm in my mid-40s. But back in my younger years in Louisiana, I could not purchase alcohol until I was 21, but I could drink at 18. Somebody else could buy it for me, and I could drink. So I just, there's some really interesting kind of craziness that goes on. But
well, yeah, the inconsistencies are monumental. I mean, I grew up for the most part in Oklahoma and Texas, and we couldn't drink. So on a Friday or Saturday night, you flip a coin to see who drives, and you drive to Wichita, where the drinking age was 18. None of it made any sense. It still doesn't make any sense. Even the handgun purchase at 21. Well, it's always been that way. Well, the Second Amendment's only for law-abiding citizens anyway, isn't it? So once you prove that you're no longer a member of that group, it's and I know we had a convicted felon call earlier, but that's how strongly the Second Amendment is embedded into our society. Even convicted felons, have some options after a period of time and application process to have their civil rights restored, including the Second Amendment. All right, let me step aside very quickly. We need to check with Marty, or is it Monty? I think it's Monty now. Let's check the afternoon drive. 35 South had rolling construction. That was good for about a 20-mile backup. Kind of nice for a afternoon, isn't it? Tuesday afternoon. Get to look at the countryside and roll your windows down. We'll check your afternoon drive. Back with your calls for the governor. That's next on News Talk 820 WBAP. 4:47 the time. Good afternoon. I'm Rick Roberts. This is News Talk 820 WBAP. Most of you have contacted me via facemail or Facebook or voicemail or email concerning the fallen Richardson police officer. And, David Prince, stepped up almost immediately, raffling off a rifle, and I think one of the vendors kicked in a handgun and a fire pit, just all kinds of stuff that you could get involved with, or you could just donate to the widow of David Sherrard, Richardson police officer. And, the drawing is on the 11th. David Prince is here to give us an update. David, how you doing?
Rick, I'm doing great. I appreciate the call. I always look forward to hearing from you.
Well, by the way, do you have a question for Governor Abbott? I'll be talking with him tonight.
Stand strong, brother. Stand strong.
All right, David, you were raffling off the rifle, the handgun, the fire pit, and then somebody kicked in, I think 4 stars ticket with access to the Lexus room. I mean, just some really nice stuff. You were hoping to get $10,000 for this family. Where are we right now?
Right now, with 6 days to go, we're at $35,013, Rick.
Oh, man.
It's unbelievable. $35,000.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
That's, in light of such tragedy, it's nice to see people reach out in a tangible way. And tell people how they can do that. Tell them what you're raffling off and give them the websites.
I sure will, Rick. Right now, also, there's of that 35,000, there's over 1,000 people that want to show that family how much they love and support them. We've had over 1,000 people step up for this between our customers and your great listeners. And I'm grateful to you and the listeners and all my great customers. The star tickets, that's one thing we haven't talked about a whole lot. $5 will get you a chance to win 2 different games. There's be 2 winners. It's 4 seats, and it's right there on the goal line. It's in section 102, which is just right behind the goal line there. Base value is $80 for the March 25th and $110 each for the March 31st. You get access. You get a free parking pass, access to the Lexus room, and it was given by
Blackall Mechanical to help out this family. And so we'll be drawing 2 of those. And that's just a $5 raffle ticket. And that's separate from the other 3. So if you just want to come in and if you already got your guns taken care of, come in and get those star tickets. So we'll draw 2 of them. And then an FN Scar 16S, a flat dark earth. It comes with one 30-round magazine, 5.56, iron sights, ambidextrous safety, and it's a retail value of $3,300. An HK VP40 OD green comes with 2 13-round 40 Smith & Wesson magazines. And as you mentioned, Circle J fire pit, a 36-inch grill top with 18-inch adjustable tortilla rack. So fire pokers and everything. It's a $1,000 value. So we'll draw 3 on that $10 value, $10 ticket, and we'll draw 2 on the $5 ticket. And you can go on to www.Eagle Gun Range TX to just donate if you'd like to, or come by one of our stores, one at 491 West Valley Ridge in Louisville, just off I-35, and then our newest store here in Farmers Branch, just south of Beltline on Midway at 14400 Midway. You can come in and buy the raffle tickets from us, or you can go online and just donate. We can't get you the raffle tickets online, so we're
go by one of the 2 locations for Eagle Gun Range or Eagle Gun Range TX to donate. Man, I can't believe this, $35,000.
Yeah, like I said, I started out with I was dreaming of 10, and I tell you, you've kept it alive, Rick. You and your listeners have kept this going, and well, like I said, we topped out at like 12 for the Dallas officers, and for us to be at 35, I'm dreaming now of 40. We've got 6 days to go. We need $4,000 in 6 days.
We'll do that.
Some great gifts.
We'll do that. We'll do that. I mean,
just pray that.
There's nothing that's going to replace a husband and a father, but at least we can reach out and say, hey, we support you. We support all law enforcement, and once an officer falls, we need to galvanize as a community and do what we can.
Amen, amen.
David Prince, always a pleasure. I appreciate it very, very much. Now, David, once again, before I sign off here, if people want to be a part of Governor Abbott's Facebook Live event tonight, I'll be there analyzing some of the races, and we've got some time to ask the governor some questions. Tell people how to do that.
Very easy. You're going to go to Facebook, and in the search bar, you'll put in Texans for Greg Abbott. Once you find that, it'll pop up. You're going to hit like. Once you like that, it will send you an automatic update when we go live, roughly around 8:30 tonight. It'll come up on your phone, your computer, or your tablet. All you have to do is click it when it pops up, and you can watch us.
All right, from 8:30 until 10 tonight. And please don't forget, go to Facebook, WBAP. Look about, I don't know where it is right now. I haven't been on there, whether it's at the top or about halfway down. Look for Put God and Prayer Back in Schools, hashtag Put God and Prayer Back in Schools. There's about 4 or 5 minutes of my discussion with the NRA, which led us to the gun issue. God and prayer is my long-term fix. I believe law enforcement should be in there right now as far as a quick fix. But go there if you would. We were trying to get, a few people to share that so that I could expose it to a national audience. What are the numbers? How many people has that reached now?
As of right now, 70,283.
70,200. Let's get it to 100, and I'll take it national. How's
there
that?
You go.
All right.
Sounds like a deal.
All right. Join us tonight for the Facebook Live event. I will be back tomorrow at 2, your afternoon drive. For Dallas-Fort Worth. God's blessings on each and every one of you, whether you agree or not. That's always my priority. I'm Rick Roberts. Stick around. Mark Levin's next on News Talk 820 WBAP.
Everybody else was just like us, soaking in the rain, baking in the sun. Don't quit till the job gets done.